Hello everybody, my name is Arlyn Pillay and here's my card. It's green and there's my name, Arlyn Pillay, and my website is called ogreShop.com. That's OGRESHOP.com. Ogre, like the creature from fairy tales and folklore. You could see all my art there and even purchase some items that have my artwork on it. Let's get started. We're going to start with some basic shapes, the circle for the head, and we're going to find the center and use triangles for the ears. We're going to use a center line that wraps around the circle, and then two circles for the eyes, and then we're going to do an oval for the body, and then kind of map out loosely the drawing here. We're going to use the side of the pencil, and you can see I'm using very light pressure. It's not very hard, and as soon as I try to get confident in the drawing, I'm going to use straight lines to kind of map out the outer edges of the kitten. And for the eyeballs there, instead of doing a circle, you can kind of do small straight lines to kind of map out the oval, and instead of doing it in one shot. Here I'm switching my hand to back and forth using the side of the pencil as well as the tip of the pencil. I use the tip of the pencil just to get more detail. I'm also mapping out the highlights in the eyes. You can see over there, and the highlights are going to be the lightest part of the drawing, so you want to try to keep that very clean. And here I'm using the side of the pencil again to shade in the shadow areas. Still keeping very light pressure on the pencil, and here I'm trying to get some patterns on the fur. Here I'm using my kneaded eraser. You want to keep it in your hand, and it keeps it nice and warm, so it starts to get soft, so you can kind of stretch the eraser. And the cool thing about the kneaded eraser is you can kind of shape it to any point that you want. And if you notice on the kitten's left ear, there's a little light hitting the ear there, so I just pulled some graphite out with the kneaded eraser, and I kind of shaped it into a nice clean edge there to pick out the graphite. Here I'm slowly darkening the drawing, you know, a little bit at a time. That's kind of how I work, very light to dark, just trying to bring every part of the drawing a little bit up at a time instead of finishing one area completely. Here I'm just making some fur texture around the kitten, still kind of in the drawing stage. Also giving some background shading there, you noticed, and going back with the kneaded eraser again. Just kind of going back and forth between shading using the side of the pencil, quite light pressure, and then going and using the tip of the pencil. Always keep your pencil sharp too, so you can get that sharp, crisp line. And if you need a dull line, then you just use the side of the pencil. Here I'm making the darker areas around the eye, and switching back and forth, adding some of the pore areas for where the whiskers are going to go later. The drawing took about 4.5 hours, and I think this video is probably going to be less than 20 minutes, maybe 19 minutes. But make sure to take your time, being very patient, and just working at your own speed. Don't worry about the deadline or anything like that. Just the slower you go, I feel, the more you'll learn, and the better things will kind of sink in, and you'll kind of fall in love with the drawing, and just fall in love with the process of just kind of enjoying each step instead of trying to rush it. Here I'm just adding more hairs, more furry texture to the cat in the facial area, and going back and forth, and now I'm filling in the background there again, and then also using the kneaded eraser and kind of pinching the kneaded eraser to give that sharp edge. And you can see how I'm kind of erasing graphite out where I use the side of the pencil. See, that's the great thing when you're drawing. You can when you're drawing softer and not too hard, that if you do make a mistake, or if you do realize we went over a certain area, you can use the kneaded eraser to pull out the graphite from the surface of the paper. You can also notice on the left side of the kitten, I kind of used the side of the pencil and added some value behind the kitten, and that's the background meeting the edge of the kitten, and I'll go back in that area and darken that up later. Just adding some more depth inside the kitten's ear, just making it a little bit more darker very slowly. There's always little pockets of dark areas, and also being aware of all the patterns, or the particular pattern this kitten has. Always trying to find where the darkest areas of the drawing will be. In this case, it'll be the pupils of the eyes and also the nostrils. So the sooner you locate those areas and fill them in, not completely black, but just so that they are the darkest in the drawing at that stage. And as you bring up the drawing, you darken those areas more, and you darken the area around it, and you continue to repeat that. Again, adding to the background value, darkening it up a little bit. Instead of drawing a hard line for the back of the kitten or the body of the kitten, I'm allowing the background value to meet up right against the kitten's body, and to create that separation. It's instead of drawing a line, you're actually having an edge, a dark edge meet a lighter edge, so it just has that illusion of separation without drawing a line. Here, just going back and forth with the kneaded eraser. Use the kneaded eraser and actually draw with it. If you see lighter areas in the subject that you're drawing, know that you can use the kneaded eraser to pull the pigment out in case you draw over that area. So see the pencil as a darker color, and then the kneaded eraser as a white color, so you can use them back and forth to make areas whiter with the eraser and to make areas darker with the pencil. And here I'm just adding more little fine hairs here and there to make the kitten extra fluffy. I'm also just always check your angles of your proportions and the angles. Is this a 45-degree angle here? Is this a 90-degree angle? Over time, you'll be able to guesstimate which angles guesstimate more correctly the angles, knowing is the cat's head tilted too much or too little or just enough, and getting the pupils in the right position. Sometimes that was kind of difficult for me when I was learning in the early stages of my learning to draw. Here I'm doing the feet, using the same method, just very lightly. Getting the pattern of the kitten, you can see on its left foot or left leg. And here it's going to be darker at the bottom, some shadow underneath the body there. Light's not hitting that area as much. Remember, there's bounced light from the floor and then coming back up into the underneath section of the kitten. Here just adding more fur and refining some details here. Some of the difficult areas is the whiskers of the kitten. Since they appear white and behind the white whiskers is rather dark, I went ahead and shaded that area very lightly and then used the kneaded eraser uh, and formed a very sharp point on the kneaded eraser and lightly used the eraser and erased in the motion that or in the angle that the whiskers are, and I repeated that process to get a very fine white line, which will be the whisker. So that takes a little bit. That's one of the more difficult areas there. You can see I'm doing it right there. Um, and make sure to clean the eraser. Just pull apart the kneaded eraser. It's very stretchy, and then use a clean area. Touch the graphite. It'll pick up the graphite. Clean it again. Form a sharp. Pinch it with your index finger and your thumb. Use the eraser again. Clean it again. Just repeat the process. It's always good to have a clean eraser so it'll pick up the maximum amount of graphite from the drawing. Just continuing to add more hairs to the fur, and also paying attention to the light source is coming more from the left side of the kitten. So the right side of the kitten would be more in dark, more in shadow. Also underneath the nose and the snout area, that'll be a little bit darker there as well, where the mouth is. There you go. I'm using the kneaded eraser again, this time to do the very fine white eyebrow. I think you can barely see it, but that's very important there. It's very fine detail, but it adds a lot to the drawing. I'm still using, or I use mostly the HB pencil. At this point I'm using the 2H pencil and going to the 2B. B stands for brittle, H stands for hard. If you use a HB pencil, that's half, that's right in the middle, hard and brittle, that's what it stands for. So that's kind of like the middle pencil to use. Sometimes if you tend to draw darker, you could try to use a harder pencil so that you don't go too dark, or if you draw too light, maybe you can try to use a darker pencil, a more brittle pencil. I'm adding more darker areas in the back right there on the right side of the kitten, and then using the kneaded eraser or leaving a white area there. I don't know if you noticed that right there at the bottom right of the kitten. You could see leaving a little white kind of halo or line. That's actually the light bouncing off from the other side. Instead of drawing a line there, you can use the background like that. It has a cool effect. Here I'm refining the whiskers, the edges of the whisker, because when you use the eraser, it does a good job, but it might not be crisp enough. So you can erase a nice thin line with the kneaded eraser, but go back in with your graphite pencil and sharpen the edges there, just to give it that more crisp look. Here I'm just going through the fur and refining areas. It makes a big difference to the end piece. Here I'm putting more darker background at the top of the kitten's head. Now I'm using the kneaded eraser to kind of bring more volume out into the kitten. I noticed that I went too dark in some areas, so now by using the kneaded eraser you can kind of it's kind of like I'm adding I'm pulling out the kitten out of the drawing wherever I use the kneaded eraser, whereas when I would add graphite, it would kind of push the object back into darkness, and here the kneaded eraser is kind of pulling out the form of the kitten or the subject and illuminating it. And here I'm going back with the pencil. So it's kind of a back and forth always, you know, until you kind of reach a middle ground. Here you're finding there's a little pattern on the forehead and the edges. And when you're using the kneaded eraser, you don't even have to really, you know, rub. Like when you place the kneaded eraser on the surface of the graphite, it should just pick up graphite instantly. So you can kind of dab the eraser, so to speak, just to clean it, and then just press it down in the area and pick it straight up, and then look at the eraser in that area, and you should notice some graphite being pulled out of the drawing. Here I'm just adding some more dark areas around the background just to balance out the drawing of darker areas to light areas. Using contrast here, bringing a dark edge right up to a light edge, like at the bottom left of the drawing, and also the bottom right, you know, and then both ears, around the edges of the ears, you can see that I use the contrast to my advantage there. Here, just refining the edge of the ear and adding more fluffy hairs there. See, as soon as I add those darker areas in the background, suddenly the kitten kind of pops out of the drawing a little bit more, kind of separates itself from the background. Just kind of all comes together all at once. And that's it. And just sign your drawing and you are done. I hope you enjoyed my first tutorial ever on how to draw a kitten. And my name is Arlyn Pillay, and please subscribe to my channel. I'll have more cool drawing lessons like this. I have Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and I think a Tumblr. And I also have a store, Ogre Shop booth, and you can shop online. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate the support, and bye.